very much, Daphne. I want to thank you also for inviting us today. And we're really pleased to be here today. I'm really pleased to be on this side of Migration Matters this year after giving what was a successful start last year. So I'm excited I'm Luann.
I'm Julie.
And this paper is also co-authored by two other researchers who aren't able to be with us today, Gingrich and Miriam Carter.
So we're going to begin, we're going to situate our research by using some of the narratives of the women in southern Mexico that we've spoken about. So I'm just going to begin by reading this and then we'll speak to the women's slide. They came to talk to me and I told them, I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you that I'm Mexican. I'm Honduran, and tomorrow I will come back. I'll be in front of you, that is how fast I will return. Why don't you give me a chance to live here for a year or two? I don't know, I'll try to arrange my paperwork, but I will not leave this place. My son is buried here, and the other son is in therapy. I'm not doing any harm, furthermore, I have my tomb. I'm going to stay here with my tomb. This comment made them laugh because they thought it was funny that I have a tomb ready for when I die.
So this quote from Olivia, we think, captures the complexity of the contexts that she is navigating on a daily basis. It demonstrates the everyday way in which border work is lived in this place, and also the various identities and places and people whose lives are implicated in the border, and how it's all worked out here. Olivia's words make visible the various borders that are inscribed on her body and are enacted in her everyday life, and how these borders are also critical to her motivations and her plans for the future, such as they are. Now, a key feature of her life is her precarious legal status in Mexico, and the further ways in which she is made illegal by a border that is both highly controlled and also capriciously porous. This dual practice of the border is useful to the business of border work, in which Olivia also participates in various ways. As a regular border crosser, as a caregiver, as a bar owner, as a sex worker, as a drug addict. Her citizenship status, as well as her female body, makes her vulnerable to exploitation and violence in the region where she lives. But precarious status also offers Olivia opportunity to navigate this border space, to negotiate border work in ways that make it possible for her to provide for her family and herself. Now, this paper that we're presenting today is from a small community-based pilot project with migrant women from Central America in southern Mexico. The project uses a narrative approach to data generation and analysis. The space of the research is in the Mexico-Guatemala borderland, and for reasons of confidentiality and security, we won't name the town and we use pseudonyms for all participants. But at the same time, we do want to introduce you to some of these women today. Through this research, we explore the conceptual debates, legal tensions, and everyday paradoxes of women's provisioning work and across national borders. Now, this necessarily means analyzing the impacts of US, Canadian, Mexican, and Central American policies and practices on migrant women's lives. The analysis that we want to present to you today is organized around the interplay between ideas of choice and necessity in the context of migration. The notion of choice is both complicated and controversial in the study of migration. In migration management or regulation in particular, discerning individual free will or agency is an obsession. Judgments of intentions, motivations, and desires cut to the core of classification schemes that define individuals and groups en route. Moreover, existing categories have consequences as they serve to sort the victim from the villain, and they're based in taken for granted understandings of choice. But all sorts of dividing lines are increasingly blurred by the practices and policies of nation states. Migrants live the consequences of transnational economic and social policies or the extraterritorial reach of state power, as Michael Collier says. As a result, any theorization of choice must consider this context of structural processes and practices, and also the constraints within which everyday choices are made. Research into the circumstances of life for millions affected by war, environmental devastation, and economic ruin shows that distinctions between choice and necessity become less relevant, if not meaningless. Our research engages with these debates through an analysis of the personal, narratives of women who migrate alone, examining choice as it manifests itself as they cross borders in and between Central America and Mexico.
So related to this, the second key concept with which our work engages is that of border work. So in the context of our research, borders loom large, and not only the very local border between Mexico and Guatemala, but also borders further north and in other spaces that influence how this border actually works. So we use a theoretical orientation that understands the border as a set of practices. It's worked out through a range of spaces and relations that generate contradiction and vulnerability, as well as opportunity and safety. So we're interested in understanding where and how the border works, but also how people make use of the border in their daily lives. And in this vein, Rumford reminds us to consider who performs the border work. It's not just the state, but it's a range of actors who are involved in working out, policing, producing borders. Now, there's a well-established body of literature on how social boundaries are produced and policed by all of us, and Rumford kind of extends this analysis to really emphasize that even political borders are involved in similar kinds of processes, with a range of actors enacting them. So who performs the border work? Rumford's point is ordinary people, quote unquote. Kind of all of us as we engage with, make use of, and often transgress those borders. So a first point to make about the borderland in which our research is situated is that multiple actors and institutions govern this space. Migration management is carried out by a range of local actors, including police, the military, La Migrant, cartels, gangs, smugglers, even local community members, all of whom have reasons for defending and working with the boundary line. And in addition, as I already mentioned, multiple states have stakes in this border, especially Mexico, Guatemala, and the United States, but even Canada is funding RCMP officers to do training on the southern border. And the interventions of states are aimed at policing not only this local border, but other borders further north as well, as Maria explains here.
The laws become more strict. They have to have a number of deportations. I feel that the most vulnerable are these women. Yes, because of everything that is happening in the U.S. now, because the idea is that Mexico needs to control its borders so that they don't go there to the U.S. So on television, they typically say, this is good, 5,000, 2,000, or 100 undocumented in this border town, for example, in order to show that immigration is working. The immigration agents are doing their job. Remember that I told you that immigration officers used to come and say, today, in the afternoon, we're going to come and do a roundup. They would say, they're putting pressure on us because we are not deporting anyone. So figure out how you will do it. Hide your girls because we are going to come.
The various actors involved in restricting migration in this area are also involved in facilitating it. So just before, there's a checkpoint kind of about 20 miles beyond the Mexico-Guatemala border. But before you get to that checkpoint, there's kind of a free or green zone where movement is relatively unrestricted. And this zone is key to the business of border work and key to how this border works. So here we refer to the informal yet highly organized business arrangements that profit from the vulnerability of migrant women in particular. Smugglers, drug dealers, immigration officers all cooperate in this border zone. And the facilitation of restricted migration provides cheap labor for local agriculture and other industries. In particular, bars have also proliferated in small towns along the border because smugglers see that these bars are very profitable. So these interests keep the bars open and busy, despite formal protestations about their immorality and criminality. So a bit more about the bars here and why women were being rounded up or threatened with being rounded up. So the women we spoke with described how they came to this border region and how they end up staying sometimes for years in this line of work and in these places. So first, smugglers, friends, family members had promised them safe passage to the United States. And once they arrived in this border region, certain women were promised easy money waiting on tables. So often smugglers were also bar owners and drug traffickers and would direct them to particular bars. At the same time, women don't only arrive at these bars being directed there by smugglers, right? There's, as Kamal already pointed to, kind of word gets around that bars are a good place to earn money and one of the more lucrative places to kind of make a living in this area. So their work begins with serving beer to customers. And Anna described how she began her work in one of the bars.
She said, you know, daughter, I need you to give me a hand. It's nothing more than passing out beer. The client orders from you and you give it to him. Anything more than that? She asked him, yes. It costs the client this much for a beer. You don't drink, do you? Yes, I drink. I like to drink. That's good. That's better. Look, your beer costs this much and the client's costs this much. I said, oh, I'll earn even for drinking with the client. That's good. So I said, yes.
So you can see that the more a woman drinks, the more money she earns, and so it becomes a kind of self-perpetuating cycle. And Marie explains kind of how it works.
They have to be happy, laughing, enjoying, and responding with caresses to the men. It's staged, like it is a work of theater. He drinks and consumes and spends, but then the women begin the sexual games so that they can take the men to bed as well, in order to earn the next pay.
Now, it's hard to function when you're drinking all day and into the evening, and so the women are offered drugs to help them maintain this work schedule. And so initially the drugs are free, but the women quickly begin to have to pay for them and quickly become indebted to the bar owners and to other individuals who are selling the drugs. And attempts to leave are sometimes met with violence. So in this way, migrant women in this area, and in particular the women described how if they were easily identifiable as being from Central America, automatically, even if they weren't working in this field, the kind of the identity of the immorality, the criminality was automatically inscribed onto their bodies. And in particular for women who are working in these bars, they're viewed and treated as criminals, and mere association with them kind of is seen to make them guilty. Now, constructed as criminals, they're subject to the violence of low-level drug dealers, corrupt immigration officers, bar owners, even one another. But these women are not helpless victims who get stuck. It's not an accurate representation of who they are and of the situations that are in. They demonstrate agency in every moment of every day. So in considering the choices, quote unquote, that are available to and made by these women from Central America, the existence of the Mexico-Guatemala border both opens and forecloses possibilities and influences their livelihood decisions. Right? Because in the borderlands, the border is everyday life. It's difficult to escape its presence and power and kind of both the opportunities and the limitations that it embodies. So we talk about the border zone as being productive of the choices or opportunities that are available to migrant women, as well as to other official and unofficial actors in this space, simultaneously limiting or constricting and permissive of particular strategies. Several scholars have referred to this as the productive tension of borders. And we see this through the kind of strategic, for lack of a better word, maybe tactical use of borders by migrant women in securing their lives and livelihoods, particularly as they make decisions about where and how to care for and support their families. So for example, Central American women can cross the southern border relatively freely. And this is important to them because the further north you go, the perception is that the pay is better and there are more opportunities for work. But similarly, if you're going to get deported, it's better not to be deported too far south. And so Gabby, for example, considers herself fortunate because she can, although she's Nicaraguan, she can pass as Guatemalan. So she only gets deported to Guatemala if she's kind of caught in one of these raids. Maria, our research partner in southern Mexico, explains the opportunities that women hope to find in this border zone.
Women I talk to now say, I just came because it's close, and we can send money to our family members in Honduras who want to return quickly. It's now very complicated to get into the USA. There is the American dream, but for those that are arriving here, this is their goal. Others tell me that their goal is to find a Mexican husband and to get legalized, and then to be able to continue to the USA in the future, but with Mexican papers to cross the borders. That's their dream. So a movement across and within this zone, first encountered when entering Mexico from Guatemala, is easy, even facilitated. Northward migration beyond the first checkpoint, particularly for women without Mexican papers, is dangerous and costly. So in this sense, the borders are also productive, not limited mobility. Although movement across the political boundary is largely unmonitored, unregulated, checkpoints are positioned along the main northern routes through Mexico. Responsibility for checkpoint security is shared between police, military, and immigration, and is also supported by the US and Canada in various ways. Women report that there are ways to get through these checkpoints if one has enough money to pay smugglers or the officials who are patrolling. In this particular region, the only way to avoid the checkpoint is to cross this river. Traversing this natural border has provided another business opportunity. Some women try to swim across in order to avoid the expense of crossing by boat or hanging bridge, and some lose their lives. Women, in a sense, then get stuck in this border zone where they will work for years trying to earn enough to get past the first checkpoint, and some return to their home country to the south. Michael Collier has described this as becoming trapped en route. And movement further north, and the promise of opportunity is cut off. And yet to say that they are trapped is not entirely accurate. Indeed, to be stuck in place is much more fluid and complicated than finding oneself physically bound to a place. Many of the women we spoke with, for example, regularly cross the Mexico-Guatemala border and move freely throughout southern Mexico and Central America. So while on the one hand, the border is productive of limited mobility, especially further north, on the other hand, migrant women are relatively mobile within this unofficial borderland that facilitates restricted movement. The complexity of border work in this region is difficult to describe, and we've struggled with how to define this, how to name it. We've landed so at the moment on this kind of movement as the tactical mobility. Strategic is almost too, forward-thinking, and that's not what we heard from them. It's tactical, instrumental, and a wide range of actors have a stake in maintaining this mobility. Migrant women are free to cross the southern border of Mexico into this free zone without documents, and this relative mobility has become part of the everyday practices associated with women's work, to support themselves and their families, to visit family in Guatemala, Honduras, etc., and to arrange for care of their children. And Gabby explained.
With my ID, I traveled from Nicaragua to Guatemala. Here I enter undocumented, but when they see me pregnant, they let me go through. Because since it's from a Mexican, they say it's going to be a Mexican, the papers for the child, and now they don't care who the baby is protected. But later on, she tells us about how in August she's going to travel. She says, I'm going to take all of my children there to Nicaragua, and I'll come back alone.
The circumstances of life and work in this borderland lie the bright lines that states and other actors attempt to draw between victimization and criminalization, strength and vulnerability, choice and necessity. Common sense conceptualizations of choice are revealed as irrelevant in this context, where choices are made within tight constraints imposed by political and economic systems. Lost in attempts to discern choice versus force are the everyday opportunities and constraints that shape the options, strategies, and choices available to women on the move as they attempt to care for themselves and their often transnational families. We want to emphasize that these women are not merely helpless victims. That's not how we encounter them. They show themselves to be women of agency and strength. And we ask them about what motivates them and why accept all this. And their response is simple and yet profound. Their children. Women report that they need to earn money to support families both here and there, to pay for food, clothes, and school. Gabby expresses the impossible contradiction of her migratory life, as if offering confession and reassuring herself in the same breath.
She says, before I would cry because I didn't have them, and now I cry because I have them and I'm making them suffer. And when they see me cry, it makes them suffer, and my daughters cry with me. They see me cry and they end up crying with me too. But she says, everything I have done is for them, to keep them well with me, because I haven't given them a better life.
So we return to this idea of paradox. We were beautifully set up for this paper today. To conclude, migrant women's stories highlight the choice of necessity that shapes their relationships, living arrangements, employment, and plans in constantly changing and often paradoxical ways. Olivia personifies this contradictory positioning and what choice really means in the context of her life. She's a 32-year-old woman from Honduras who is a mother, a bar owner, a sex worker, a pimp of sorts, a drug addict, a drug dealer, and has lived undocumented or illegalized in this border town for 10 years. She describes her negotiation of the choices available to her, the agency that she and others exhibit, practice, and claim mingles alongside severe vulnerability. Negotiations of the border and border work in their daily lives are choices. Yet these are choices of necessity, livelihood decisions that are instrumental rather than aspirational. In this borderland, women are confronted with the necessity of choice. Migrant women and their narratives expose the wider social, political, and economic contexts that function to produce this borderland and their everyday realities. And they also compel us to grapple with the ways in which our lives and theirs are on the table.
Thanks,
Thanks.